Okay, welcome to our new episode, SaaS Sales Made Easy. I'm excited to get into this one. I'm Jeremy, youth LinkedIn growth expert. This is my co-host, James Mason, also a LinkedIn growth expert. And this episode is specifically made for SaaS to help you guys understand like a proven process to actually get more results from LinkedIn, to get more demos, to get more customers and users for your product. A lot of things we're going to talk about are going to be, deep nuance, but they're still going to be simple to understand at the same time and very effective because we've tested a lot of these strategies out. So, James, you excited for this one?
Absolutely, pal. And just the obvious to just jump right in there right at the beginning is, of course, this is going to be a very in-depth episode. The tactics we're talking about are difficult to understand. We've tried to do our best to make them simple, but we can help you, of course, do these. So keep that in mind throughout. If you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, feel free to reach out to either of us or both of us, and we can happily help you.
100%. Cool. Yeah, let's get into it.
Fantastic. So just before we share some strategies, I think it's fair to say with this one that making sure that the company page for a SaaS business is complete and up to date with your information, because we work with so many customers here where they, without them even realizing they're promoting a project that doesn't exist and it's 5 years old, that we want to make sure that there's no way of finding anything that you don't want them to actually see. So making sure that description's updated with the latest projects, your story behind it, these sorts of things. We want to make sure all of that's up to date before we look on taking any more attention than you already have.
Yeah, James, I'm sure you're familiar with like the fact that people, when you're speaking to them, they look you up. They look you up on LinkedIn, they look you up on Google too. They look into your company. And if things aren't optimized for attention, mass attention, then you're kind of committing a cardinal sin, because like if you want more eyeballs, that's great, but what are people actually looking at? And if it's not something that speaks to them or that they understand, you're just maybe paying money or investing time into getting all this attention for no reason. So it starts with that foundation.
Couldn't agree more. Well, with our first strategy, it's utilizing LinkedIn webinars. The reason we share this is because they can help you simply generate more demos and leads, but it has to be done in a very specific way that we haven't seen too many SaaS brands do it outside of what we do. And the customers that we've worked with absolutely love it and have booked, in some cases, hundreds of demos from LinkedIn. And I'll share a little bit about that. But Jeremy, what's your thoughts on webinars for SaaS industries? How many do you feel you've done, and what's your experience seeing them work?
Webinars are extremely important, especially for SaaS, because SaaS is an industry where education is so crucial. Education on not just what the product is and how it works, but its ROI. And that's especially if you're like B2B SaaS. These clients, they want to know what's the return on investment. If your contract is like 3 months, 6 months, a year, we're just talking about one company that's like a year. What's the ROI? And with the webinar, you can be in video format. You can share your screen, but it can be talking head too. And you can talk about how your product hits on all these points. And it's the education and that understanding that gets people really curious. So that's a critical thing related to webinars.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I really look at the webinar page as a landing page. And I know we do a lot of back and forth on this over these past episodes, but the webinar page, a lot of people hear webinar and roll their eyes because it's like an older term. And I actually agree they should change it to something that's a bit more unique, let's say. But in reality, that page, we build them so it immediately tells them why they should join, tells them about who's hosting it. And then the last thing is about the company and why they should sign up for your software. And that approach, just giving people that understanding of where they can learn about all those things in a bullet point style, it doesn't get more efficient than really those landing pages, because you're really stuck with what you have there. So you might as well utilize it in that moment. But in reality, for these demos, we find that actually giving a very clear understanding of what your tool does, but making the event about a demo is the key. And the reason I say it that way is that the demo can actually be hosted not only one-to-one, which is where we advise you to do it. So everyone that joins, you write to them and you book them into their demo that they're expecting. But if they don't join a one-to-one session, you can just simply host the webinar and make it that demo. And it's immensely powerful. And you can rinse and repeat it. And as long as your software is not updating too much, you can keep it as an evergreen process as well. That way you don't even have to run it on the platform.
Yeah, and as SaaS founders watching this, CTOs, whoever you are watching this, I'm sure you love efficiency. It's probably why you created a tool to begin with, to make something efficient or easier. I'm telling you right now, content is one of the most efficient, high leverage assets you can have. And webinar falls under content, of course, because you're talking to many people. It's almost like a demo. Like it is a demo really with a bunch of people. And what you can do even is as you're doing this demo, webinars, it's important to have, especially this type of webinar, it's important to have FAQs. So if you have frequently asked questions after you go through your software, maybe you've compiled a list of 10 questions your customers have asked or leads have asked, right? Or there's been industry research and these are common questions. You answer those questions on the webinar, you're essentially answering objections that you would have had if you worked one-to-one with the people watching. So like not only is it high leverage, but you're answering objections, the likelihood of booked calls. In fact, I'm continuing on here. When people book a call, it's not like them buying or them investing in this software it's like a foregone conclusion. Like, of course they're going to invest because they've already looked into it. They already thought about it. They already saw the testimonials, your walkthrough. The call in and of itself, one-to-one, is like for your sales team or yourself, it's a lot more efficient. It would probably take up less time on your calendar. So
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, even just to add to that as well, just from the more of the marketing side of that, is what happens when you start targeting the people that you're looking for, but then you also start getting known within the industry. I think for me, all the softwares that we use in-house is solely based on recommendation or we've discovered them. And absolutely. I feel that discovery is kind of the key with that, with the majority of them coming from that angle, because if I find you for exactly what you do, I feel like I made that discovery. It's my decision to try your tool, right? But we can create this feeling on LinkedIn, specifically using webinars. So when you target industry, you can immediately, from when you invite someone and they join, it reshares it to their entire network. So if you have competitors in your network, or if you have other industry people, when you join something on LinkedIn, it gets reshared. And we look to utilize that with a webinar for your benefit. And really, it just increases that chance of discovery, which I think is probably one of the most important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's more attention. And like you said, someone feels like, oh, I discovered this, let me tell my colleagues and friends about this amazing tool. And then they like it too. It's validation for that person. And
totally.
Yeah.
No, totally. I mean, in reality, and then once you have this attention, once you're getting known within your industry from the webinar, and I kind of like to explain all of these elements that we're speaking about, they're their own bubble on LinkedIn. So even if you have a really popular webinar, you still need to do some other stuff as well to be being seen to different audiences, because whilst some of you would be like, yep, webinars work, they kill it. Another person watching this is like, James, move on from the webinar topic. I'm not interested. But you need to consider them all because they work in their own right. And what we find is when you connect all of them together and they're all synced with each other, that's where you can really win on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So that does bring up a question for me. So James, how would you go about, because I'm sure people watching this, they're sold on webinars. They're like, this makes a lot of sense. But if they're trying to implement it for their organization, they may have a CEO, a CTO, someone in their organization that's like, webinars, no, we don't need that. So how does that person communicate what we just said to that person in like a very straightforward manner so they can understand? What would you say about that?
Yeah, well, I think for us, and we both say this quite often as well, and in my case, I let them know two things. You can generate opted-in email leads directly from LinkedIn without them having to leave. LinkedIn love you because you do that. You're not trying to get them to go somewhere else. And secondly, it reshares it to the entire industry every single time you invite someone and they join. So every time you get one lead, you can quite literally see 10 more come in. Now, if you watch your webinars audience often, I see 70 to 100 new people a day in the week, not on weekends, but in the week. When you get those campaigns running, you can really start seeing people rejoining and resharing and commenting even. And yeah, it's a great, I just simply can't speak more highly about that approach for LinkedIn, specifically using an organic method. It really outperforms a lot of them at the minute for most. Yeah. So secondly to that, for sure, is if you're not the webinar type, perhaps you're not even the type that wants to be on camera. Of course, there's some people that are and some people that aren't. We recommend bringing in LinkedIn newsletters. And much like what you'll hear from us in the future, LinkedIn has this habit of giving you something, taking it away, and then giving you something back that's rebranded that's the exact same thing. Now, newsletters is another relatively old term. Me and Jeremy laugh about this all the time. But in reality, it's just a hub of content. And I'll allow Jeremy to explain those a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. So when you're making content, you got to think in terms of having a library. And when you think that way, then you'll have a long-term mentality when it comes to the content you make. So in the conversation of newsletters, when you're making them weekly, maybe twice a week, maybe twice a month, as long as it's consistent, through time, you're building up a library of content. You can view them as assets to do what? Educate. Because again, the theme here with SaaS sales is education. Your newsletter is another format to educate your ideal clients, right? So you're in the DMs talking to them. You're posting on your page. Maybe your company is posting on their page. Okay, your website is educating. But what if you also have a newsletter that honestly you could just repurpose for using your articles? I know a lot of SaaS brands use what's it called? SEO a lot of times. You can literally repurpose your SaaS articles on your website to your newsletter, shorten them up, and then have that be what's going on is that people that haven't been on your website yet, they still get the same important information they need while still staying on LinkedIn. You're meeting them where they're at. And then from there, that could lead to a lot of trust being built, authority being built, credibility, and conversions. You know, maybe you end it with a lead magnet, or it could even be a direct call to action to work with you. Those work great too, still. So LinkedIn newsletters are a very powerful approach to converting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jeremy, what would you recommend for a SaaS brand? Albeit, obviously, you don't have the context, but would you prefer to build one of these for customer networking, where it's kind of teaching you you use social proof to display how your customers are benefiting, and that's how I like to call it, customer networking? Or would you prefer to do this in the light of kind of trying to convince new people to consider a tool? Which one would you prefer?
I like the idea of talking about success stories, like the first option of customer success. Hey, this is how we use our CRM helped this company get this amount of book demos, or through email, for example. That right there is a clear, quick case study of our tool working. Because at the end of the day, when people invest in tools, it's not about the tool, actually. It's about the end result they want. So if they read this quick case study on your newsletter about this client that's similar to them, that got this result that they want, well, what's the vehicle to get to that result? It's this tool. Okay, now I really want to learn about this tool. Now I really want to hop on this demo, you know? So that's my number one go-to, I'd say, is the social proof example.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. With the newsletters as well, I love the description of a library as well, right? And this is vastly important when you have a webinar on the platform, when it has more than 10 posts within it. Sorry, not a webinar. When you have a newsletter on the platform with more than 10 posts, you'll actually start to see new people joining it, and you get the notification, and then you start to see them engaging with old content. For whatever reason, inside the newsletter, it's way more digestible to scroll back than it is on your company page or even a profile. And that is super, super powerful. Something we didn't touch on, Jeremy, which I have to mention. I know we don't really like this word, but the whole LinkedIn algorithm that nobody sees. What I can tell you is when these platforms, they really dislike it when you try and take people away from their platform and to your websites for you to benefit. That's why they make you pay, like ads. In reality, what this newsletter does is it brings people to the platform. So when you make that post, everyone on their phones gets a notification from your company that you made a post, and they get an email. And it comes from LinkedIn, so it lands in the inbox. You don't have any of these worries about spam. It's immensely powerful for building that story, getting that history. And it might be one of the quickest ways to build rapport on LinkedIn without obviously booking a call with someone. And you just kind of get everything at once, and you can check it all out based on your interests for that company or that call. I can't speak more highly of it.
Yeah, well said, James. I think one thing people will notice with our approaches or the strategies we recommend is there's a lot of leverage behind it, but behind these strategies. Like the LinkedIn newsletters, people are getting notified through email, through LinkedIn sending it, which is an authoritative sending email, right? That these email systems look at. So it goes directly to the inbox. That's a lot of leverage, especially if you have a big network. And then we just talked about webinars too, which we already talked about how that's high leverage. So I think these are very powerful things to look into.
Totally. And I think what we're about to cover here in just a moment is how you collide all of them together to bring that scale. Now, Jeremy, I know what you're going to recommend. On the side of scale, how do you feel content comes into this?
Yes. So do you want me to just jump right into the content and cold email combo? Or
go ahead. Take it how you like. I mean, in reality, I'm hearing your approach with how you use content to also increase the authority of your webinars, but also see newsletters are content. How do you separate, drive traffic to kind of all of it?
For sure, yeah. So content obviously builds your authority, educates people. It's good stuff. The thing about email automation, aka cold email, is that it puts it on steroids. It puts attention on steroids. So if you have a list of people, it could be leads, it could be customers, people that have hopped on a call with you. What you can do, well, actually, you know what? Let me backtrack. This is cold. So this is just people that don't know who you are. Let's just talk about that. And let's say in the past couple of months or so, you've been posting on LinkedIn consistently, videos, newsletters, things like that. When you're sending cold emails, you no longer have to put yourself in the box of being like, this is our software tool. It's the best in the market. Buy now or schedule a call now. No one wants to hear that. So what do? Well, what you do is you lead your cold email flow with questions, but content as well. So the questions identifies a problem first. It can do that. Your questions could also bring curiosity. Like, hey, you could bring up the case study thing we talked about. Like, hey, our software booked this amount of calls for our client. Want to learn how? Let's hop on the call, right? That type of curiosity. But then there's the questions around problems. But your content, let's say they don't reply to the first email, second email, third email. Well, you should be sending them content. You should be sending them videos. You should be sending them your webinar that you recorded. Because what does this do? Educates, builds trust, authority. Now, all of a sudden, by the fourth, fifth cold email you sent, those past couple emails have been content. People were like, dang, okay, let me talk to this person. Let me actually reply. Oh, that was actually very helpful. Or they don't even reply. They just book a call with you. Yeah, I've seen that happen too. So that's how you want to think about it. Content is long-term. It's very effective. But if your network isn't big, that's not the end of the world. Yes, you can build your network up through time, but cold email can help so much with that by getting those eyeballs and building trust.
For sure. I mean, in my opinion, Jeremy, the content is fantastic. To touch on the webinar, you also mentioned that webinars are content. I actually agree that I think the difference with the webinars is kind of like a single piece of content that keeps on giving, in the sense that it keeps generating new people, new discovery on the platform. But with cold email specifically, and obviously we have on screen here the 30,000 emails for $180 a month. That's exactly what we look to build with our email systems. With the content, it's vastly important to getting that message across in a healthy way. The reason we love LinkedIn is because I can send you a very brief message and you can look at my entire background within about 30 seconds. You can know where I was from, what schools I went to, what level of education I have, what I currently do for work. You can see my website all within one spot within about 30 seconds, right? With cold email, you have none of those. So you have to utilize a method where you're showing your social proof. So for instance, we have a LinkedIn Masterclass, as you know, Jeremy, but one of the emails in the line in there is 400 other professionals have joined. Would you like a link? You're able to use your own social proof to drive even more signups and leads. And that's vastly important to sharing more education, sharing and touching base with them. I also really prefer sending newsletter posts as well. I do this on LinkedIn more often than I do by cold email, but perhaps I should bring that scale. The reason for that is you can preview a post. You can't view a post in a newsletter. You have to sign up. So if you want to drive more traffic there, get more touch points, and of course it's still email marketing in the end of the day, if you remember with the emails, we find that that combination of using these different methods, but making sure they all collide together to benefit each other is how you really win on LinkedIn. You can have all the attention in the world, but if you're not driving that traffic to where you need it to go and have them learning about who you are and what you do, it's vastly important to the process.
Yeah. Very well said.
Just
What could,
go ahead.
because I like your approach when it comes to email a lot. I definitely like how you use numbers in your subject lines and in your emails to specify things, adds a lot of social proof. But I also like that. I guess my question is, could you just emphasize, because you're a direct case study of our own process, of our process, of the amount of replies you get from your cold emails to various markets.
Absolutely, yes. If I take the financial advisor market, which is one that we specialize in, we just last week, I can share with you because I just did the stats this morning, we had 56 people interested in booking a call, 15 of them scheduled for that week, the rest of them are for future weeks. Obviously, it doesn't fit everyone's schedule, or perhaps when they're looking to making a buying decision. With advisors, what we've also heard back based on the feedback is they don't look to take on anything until April. We all know why that is, but that's one of the things and reasons we've been given a few times. And we had 187 people visit the landing page and sign up. So that's not page views, that's people signed up to hear more information for the future. And that's from about 8,000 emails last week. So super direct. Obviously, in our case, what we like to do is make content to display those numbers. In your case, as a SaaS brand, you want to do this to educate people on why they should use you. We use webinars, as you can see. We use newsletters all the time. It might even be how you heard about this, but it's the combination of telling more people, I feel, but driving that traffic through education. Jeremy, we both know this, and it's probably great to remind these SaaS founders. I've never done business with anyone that I don't know, to at least a little bit. And obviously, we've all moved to this remote world in the last however many years. It's even more important to take that approach, because 98% of people will lead with trying to sell people cold. When you lead with getting to know them, just that subtle shift opens the door dramatically. And that's what we kind of do. We get the attention with numbers, but in reality, we're kind of educating them to how we help.
Yeah. The way I view it is, anytime you're looking to invest your resources into something, money, time, energy, you want to get a payout from it. So if somebody doesn't know you and you're just pitching off the bat, you're telling them, okay, I have this thing that supposedly of value. Give me your resources, time, energy, money. But you don't know who I am. So like what trust does is just like, even if your service is good, when you create content, it's like that second layer of reassurance that this is a real person. They know what they're talking about. And sometimes that's the only difference maker between one person that the same service, one person closes more deals or gets more users, the other doesn't as much. Literally comes down to the trust that's built.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to touch on very briefly, but YouTube, That's how YouTubers work, right? They build a trust with an audience over years and years of making whatever content they make. The audience that watch them feels like they know them, and they consider buying whatever it is they may be looking to promote or sell. Exact same thing, just in LinkedIn, it needs to be done a bit smarter, because in most cases, the people you're targeting are very smart individuals. TikTok has its format, LinkedIn has its own format, and the stuff that you do needs to be impressive, specifically for SaaS brands, because you know you're in front of some very high level people out there.
Good point. Yeah, and I know we're going to get to the next topic soon, but yes, one thing to definitely remind yourself of is your market's sophistication, how smart they are, basically. And James put it perfectly. Look at the medium you're marketing on, and look at the people you're marketing to, and understand that their level of sophistication, your content should be beyond that, basically, right? It should be that good where they're like, wow, they're blown away by what you're putting out. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, absolutely, pal. I mean, that for me is kind of the key. It's just making sure that people, like anyone watching, understand that the cold approach needs to be of value and education, specifically for SaaS brands. In reality, I don't know how many SaaS brands are doing booked calls rather than like a free demo. In my experience, there's been a lot of free demos to try it 1 month, 1 week, a few hours, whatever it is. So when that's the case, even if your call to actions for free, it's still unbelievable how much you have to educate someone to sign up even for free. So yeah, even more so on LinkedIn where you've got top businesses. Excellent. Next one. How do you bring even more scale to what I would call is the discovery element of who you are? Now, just to give some context to why I made that adjustment there, with cold email, you're starting the conversation. That can benefit you dramatically to get in front of people and kind of introduce yourself about how you could help them. Ads, for me, are how you get discovered by them. Same people, just they find you rather than you find them. And that can actually be a difference maker alone. Or you could be doing all the right education, all the right things, but you might just find that you being found is kind of the key. And I'll allow Jeremy to explain that.
Yeah, ads bring a lot of predictability to your marketing. So what happens is, what you're noticing is that the closer you get into kind of more of a paid model, the more there's more predictability. There's more of an input output kind of mechanism. So cold email, you kind of see it. Okay, this amount of email domains, I send this amount. I scrape this amount of contacts, get this ROI. With ads, it's even more so. So input this amount into an ad set. Ideally, I get this cost per lead, and then the cost to get a client or a customer or user is this amount. So that's what ads do. They add predictability. Now, what we recommend, because LinkedIn ads, these aren't cheap, right? LinkedIn ads are not cheap, and especially if you're a SaaS and you guys have a marketing budget, a sizable good one, you know who you're targeting, you're good. You're probably good. But if you're a SaaS where either you're in MVP mode, right, minimal viable product, or your budget isn't the biggest, we highly recommend that you take measures to reduce ad spend while still getting good results. How do you do that? It's by leveraging lookalike audiences in your ads. So lookalike audiences are people that are similar to a given list that you give LinkedIn. So this list could be users that are using your product. It could be leads too. I personally think users is more powerful because they bought, so it's more powerful. So if you have a list of like 300 users, at least 1,000 users, however much, you want it to be at least around 300. That's prime real estate for you to use. Take that list, upload it to LinkedIn, and then make a lookalike audience from those people, and then target those people. And what you'll find is that because they're similar to those purchasers, the sales cycle might shorten, highly likely, because they have similar psychology, similar, they're similar, obviously same industry, similar kind of point in their careers to invest. So
I mean, just to touch on that as well. I mean, something I would recommend with all of this is probably just who you're targeting, right? So whether it's ads or whether it's content, you still want to know who you're speaking to. Something me and Jeremy have the ability to do is dissect the LinkedIn platform to find exactly who you're looking for. I know it's not part of this webinar, but with LinkedIn groups, if your subject matter or your SaaS revolves around a specific subject or even topic, let's just say a SaaS tool that helps you write copywriting, let's just say as an example, or software that allows you to do that, we can then go into groups and find people that are already interested in that subject. So that kind of breaks down and kind of speed up that process. Now with LinkedIn ads, you have a certain criteria of what you can target on, but in LinkedIn organic, you have actually more, albeit that you can't get to as much scale. So it's the combination of the two where we find success, much like all of this. Because if we can tell LinkedIn exactly who you're looking for, then they can go out and tell more people that match that criteria. And that's where you can really win at a much cheaper rate.
Yeah, James, could you also bring up the importance of, well, it's important, it's not required, but it's a cool strategy on top of this, is leverage, is kind of how you approach messaging with ads. So people opting into your ads, messaging them directly.
Yes.
What role does that play in things?
Great point, Jeremy. What a tactic for this as well. So what most businesses skip over, and I've done paid ads much like Jeremy for a very long time, is the only thing that's tracked is the people that click through. So you might have a whole system, you might have tracking pixels in place to make sure that you can retarget them and all these sorts of things. But removing from that, much like a message or a cold email, what we notice with these tactics is great. They might be interested, but they'll say, "Hey, I'm interested, but I don't have the time for this right now," or "It's not right time. Message me in a couple of weeks, a couple of months. Message me next year," whatever it is. So we took this tactic and said, "Wait a minute, this works on paid ads as well." And what I mean by this is most of your paid ads that you've been running that are in any form successful, they probably have some really good engagement on that ad itself. We know this, we use this as a tactic as well. And with that in mind, you can actually automate messaging to message every person that engaged with your ad that didn't buy. That, I can't tell you how immensely powerful that is, because you're not wasting any efforts. So that can be done manually, and that can also be done automated. Entirely up to you which route you go. We can help you on both sides, but that is how you speak and get to understand a little bit more about your target audience, especially if they didn't buy. Much like they say with like champions in fighting, they only ever learn from their losses. Well, every person that engaged with your ad that didn't buy is a loss. Start looking into that information, beginning that conversation with them, and start figuring out why they didn't buy. In some cases,
Jeremy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in some cases, Jeremy, just the conversation alone gets them to buy. Right? And that from good. Carry on.
Very well said. What I was going to say is in those conversations, you can collect information regarding like what their hesitations were. Like, let's say someone ends up buying or they don't buy at all. You could still kind of inquire about, well, they're qualified to buy, but what was the slow up? Time could be a thing. Oh, I don't have time to invest in this tool or try to train my team. Let's say their objection is no time. Like training my team is going to be tiring. Don't have the resources for it. Okay,
For sure.
that's fine. In your ad, the next ad you make, or you could reply to them, but the next ad you make, it's, oh, we'll train your team as well. That's an offer you can make.
Yeah.
What if you could just do that?
Or even how about this, Jeremy? How about you send them an invite to a webinar? They didn't join your event, but maybe they could learn more. Or maybe you send them a post in a newsletter and you start connecting all the dots together so you start benefiting yourself. The best thing you could do is speak to the people from your paid ads to try and get them to learn more about what you do. That's kind of the
what makes our system powerful is that it's a feedback loop. On the organic side, the organic can feed into your paid ad strategy. Your paid ad strategy can feed into the organic. So people that don't convert in one mechanism at this time of the year because they're not ready, that doesn't mean that you don't, if they didn't convert from your webinar, but they were an attendee, well, add them to a list where you're targeting them for an ad. It could be a different offer, but you're still top of mind. And
Yeah.
and James, we see this all the time. Someone we hop on a call with in January doesn't work with us until June. you know, it's like,
Yeah.
especially if you're a SaaS, a B2B SaaS in particular, where your sales cycles are long. It's like a no-brainer. It's like, it's going to take
Yeah.
7 months to close this big deal. Like your
Yeah.
cost, a value of a client for you is very high. It's just going to take longer to close. That's fine. Keep
Totally.
investing in your marketing long term so that when the time comes, the people you marketed to back in January, a bunch of people start converting in like July or August, whatever, because
Yeah.
you kept the machine running.
No, totally. I mean, even with what we're speaking about today, all the things we've mentioned in this episode are possible today. For a lot of those people that we spoke to in January, the things we would recommending to do then aren't all the same today. LinkedIn's changing rapidly. So if you like anything you've heard here, get in contact. I don't like to be that guy, but a lot of the stuff we've shared today can go out of date relatively quickly. I'd say within 6-7 months, a lot of what we've shared today may not even be the prime thing to go after.
Yeah, one thing we like to do with our clients is to update them on LinkedIn itself, the platform itself, and educating them on it. So it's not uncommon for us to hop on calls and be like, "Oh, this feature is different now. This is how we're pivoting because of this update." And if you're not really up to date with that stuff, like you're kind of in your own bubble, you could miss it. So that's what makes us very helpful in that regard. If you work with us, or book a call.
Yeah, totally. And just one last thing here to wrap up. I don't really want to share too much about it. I just want to get some excitement around it. But me and Jeremy have kind of come across a potential new tactic which we think could really kill it with SaaS brands. Jeremy, I'll allow you to explain.
Of course, of course. AI calling agents. And I know some of you listening just got really excited because SaaS, a lot of SaaS founders love AI, right? Really, they're really leveraging that and building AI systems. AI calling agents are very powerful because they can make your outreach very efficient. And outreach meaning people that have opted into something. So these could be people in your CRM. This could be people that have downloaded the lead magnet of yours, people that have booked a call with you. You can build these AI agents to understand your business, your product and service, understand your customer, and then call them and basically pre-qualify them, ask a few questions, and then book them in for you on a call. So yeah, that's really cool. Imagine you have all these systems running, your content, your newsletter stuff, cold email, ads maybe, and then you have this calling agent in the background that is getting fed all this data and then calling people to qualify them and educate them. Not only that, they sound very human.
Totally.
And James and I have spoken to these calling agents. We're building some right now.
Yeah, immense. I have to say, I was impressed. I was so impressed. Everyone hears it, you think, oh, AI, oh, I've heard some speaking stuff. I've seen some terrible TikTok clips, right? This is not that. This is like someone on a Monday morning that might be slightly hungover, but is genuinely a nice person on the other end. That's, you know what I mean? And it's like, hey, how can I help you? Like,
yeah, this little pause, yeah.
What I found interesting with it really is the ability for it to actually listen to what you say and then suggest something else. So, for instance, if someone's saying, if the question was, hey, we noticed that you inquired about 6 months ago, but we haven't seen you sign up for a tool, what kind of kept you reserved? And they say, well, I don't think we knew enough about your tool. It can take them through a process to recommend them the webinar. It could recommend them a one-to-one session. It can learn and change what it suggests based on their reply. That's the game changer. It's not just a sequence that the people go through.
Yeah, and the beauty of it also is, and of course it depends on what CRM tool you're using, but you can hear these recordings that this AI caller is making, and you can get the transcripts. So in writing, you can literally have notes about how that call went, what that individual learned on that call, what information was shared with them. Wow. And then from there, on your demo, when you hop on a demo with them, you already have that information with you. So it's so efficient, and also, you know, it's scalable as well. So the more lead volume you're getting, it's not like this AI caller needs to take a break or they need to sleep or go to Cancun for vacation, you know. So
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
powerful.
in reality, I don't know what it costs to have someone calling up leads and trying to figure out why. I mean, if you even can fathom doing that, I mean, it's a kind of a new thing. This costs like 12 cents a call. Like, you can't do that with a person today. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's going to be immense to see how this grows. But that was just really a teaser. We just want to share with you. No doubt we'll do a whole segment episode on that in the future. But yeah, Jeremy, great episode. If you're interested in putting in any of these elements of what we do, feel free to get in contact with us, and we'll be sure to help you the best that we can.
absolutely. Great chatting with you, James.
Yes,
Thank you for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.
absolutely. Speak to you soon.